so here's a bat on my bookshelf.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, how the hell am I going to get the bat out of my house? Like, and it's sitting there and it's flapping its wings. It's like, it's hissing at me.
Yeah.
And it was late. It's like, can I call 911 to come get a bat? No. It's like, so, and this is where, so we talk about the power of a divergent brain.
Uh-huh.
It's like, wait a minute. I have these really big oven mitts.
Is that what you used?
Wait a minute. I see the plastic grocery bags. So 2 plastic grocery bags and my big oven mitts. I put on the oven mitts. I grabbed the bags. I scooped him up and I flung him out the house and he flapped off into the night.
Hello and welcome to TalkieTime. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Laura Dorsey.
Yes.
Okay, I realized I didn't check how to pronounce that with you and I was like, oh, I'm going to screw this up.
That's okay. My maiden name was a very German last name that nobody pronounced. So I got called Laura Rhinoceros a lot when I was growing up.
Rhinoceros? I'm sorry. I feel bad for laughing. But
I can laugh about it.
Well, so Laura, to get us started, you had your story kind of begins, you said, in your mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
So give us kind of a broad perspective of what did that look like for you and how did that kind of lead into this problem solving that we're going to get to talk about later?
So, sure. So I had moved back up to the Raleigh-Durham area from Charlotte, where I'd been living. I was relatively newlywed. I'd been having some health challenges, and I'd left a pretty active social life and job in Charlotte to come back up here and be married, and I was sad and lonely and depressed, and things imploded.
Yeah.
My marriage imploded. We were having problems, and I went to therapy for the first time in my life.
Oh, wow.
I was struggling. I was really depressed. My mom said to me, she said, you need somebody to talk to who's not going to throw it back at you over your cornflakes the next morning. And for my mother, who was, raised in the wilds of Georgia, country as you come, to say that, I'm like, she's a pretty smart lady. So I went and found a therapist. And I worked with this therapist for a good long time. And she was really, she helped me deal with the depression and understand it was years and years of emotional stuff that I had not been dealing with. I'd just been shoving down into a bucket and hoping they wouldn't pop up. And she helped me deal with that.
Sure.
And then she helped me figure out why my brain was the way it was. And surprise, I was 26 years old and heard for the first time, have you ever been tested for ADHD?
And I want to pause there to interject. So you're 26, so you're past undergrad, so you have already completed your bachelor's in physics before discovering that you have inattentive ADHD.
Yes.
Okay. So to just for the sake of the audience, you were able to focus and bring all of this attention and effort and everything together to complete a very, very rigorous degree. And then you discovered and you're like, how did that affect you? How did that make you feel? What was that like?
To hear why my brain
was.
It was a relief.
Really?
Because the sort of things that had led me into trouble in my marriage, that had led me into just the depression, was feeling that I was screwing things up. I was not doing well. I was bad at a lot of things. And it was almost like a weight had come off, because what it really meant, it really didn't mean I was bad at things. It just meant that my brain was working differently than the expectations the world had for me. Right. I was married to somebody who had a different perspective on the world, and to him, my inability to see a pair of shoes in the hall was just me being lazy. It literally, he couldn't comprehend that if I was thinking about something else, those shoes might not have ever been there. And really, out of that first work with a therapist, it helped me understand how to live in the world. And so, the first thing was my beloved to-do list, right? So even today, many years later, I write to-do lists all the time.
Yeah.
And I would, And for, for the sake of our marriage, we put a little, one of those little whiteboards like you put on the outside of your dorm rooms on the fridge, and we just write things on there. So if there's something that he needed me to see, we'd write it on there. Mm-hmm. And so that would be an organizational construct that let me function, right? Because I'm not going to, I might remember 2 or 3 days later to move my shoes or scrub up the rubber mark on the floor, but I might see it and say, oh, I should do that, and then be thinking about something else. And then four thought jumps later and a couple squirrels, I've already forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the first understanding of beginning to understand how my brain worked and what I needed to do in order to function. It took me some time realizing it. As much as it sucked to be divorced, it was an opportunity, because it sort of let me grow into the person that I am today. Taught me to go do the things I want to do. I like to travel. I got on a plane with my 5-year-old and flew out to Alaska to meet my sister and her husband, because they were climbing Denali, and like, hey, why don't you come out here with Ben and we'll do a trip around Alaska. It's like, okay, I've never done anything that before. It's like, I have to buy plane tickets. I have to figure out rental cars. I have to, and these are all, for whatever reason, these are all things that before I was kind of on my own and forced to figure this stuff out, I would have been afraid to do.
Really?
Yeah.
And was it kind of, the way that you just framed it, it sounds like you attribute that to being on your own. Is there something about being on your own that kind of clicks for that? Or do you think that that's more of you became more comfortable in yourself and you became more confident in your decision making without an external partner who may have been not encouraging your confidence and ability? So
probably a little of column A, little of column B. It was, it was really the first time that I was beginning to realize I think I had the freedom to make these choices. Okay. And not in a bad way, but it was the, plan A, your plan A is done. Come up with a plan B. And, but it doesn't, but not a rigid plan B that sort of locked you into steps and steps and steps. It was okay, who are you going to be now? Who are you going to be now? Who you were before it wasn't working for you.
Right.
Who are you going to be now? And so at the time my marriage fell apart, I'm not sure how I survived it, because my mom had a massive heart attack at age just before her 62nd birthday. And this was all during the time where a span of months where my ex and I were figuring out what was going to happen. And ultimately, he ended up leaving, but I didn't talk to her about that, because I was already feeling it in such a heavy way that I didn't, first of all, I was afraid she would go kill him, but,
sounds like a good mother.
She's great. Yeah, she was my best friend. I would call her on the way home from work every day just to say, hey. I mean, we had to get there, but so it was, and she died, and then my sister and I we spent that autumn, cleaning out her house and trying to get it ready to sell, and my marriage was falling apart. And I went back to my therapist. And
the same one.
Same one. Okay. And I would finish a session with her, and I'd leave, and I would pull into the parking lot of the Chili's in Durham and just sob, and I'd call my aunt, my mom's younger sister, and just because it was hard. It was the hardest time of my life. And I didn't want to be divorced, and so some of the pain was kind of getting to the point where getting out of that paralysis, realizing I didn't really have a choice. And so, coming out of that, I was on my own for 2 years. I didn't date anybody, I was just like, so I knew that we would need to we need to sell the house we had together because I didn't want to keep living there. I wanted someplace different. And so, figuring out how do I sell the house because it was on me. I had to do that. And then, like figuring out buying a house all by myself because I'd never done that before.
Yeah.
And then, picking out it, it's almost like I was having a really big, really quick grow up session, right?
Yeah.
So, but, and I didn't do it all by myself, but these were the things I had to do. They were my responsibility. So,
Right.
my sister, I have a sister and we're really close and she helped me out. And my sister-in-law, they all helped me out, but it was like, okay, now I have this house and I live in it all the time. And my kids only here part of the time. That's kind of the next thing you have to figure out how to handle.
Yeah.
And
when you say figure out how to handle, do you mean logistically or emotionally? What?
All the things,
Okay.
Logistically, how do you co-parent with somebody who you maybe aren't getting along with very well? And there's a reason it's better that we're divorced.
Right.
Emotionally, and I was still. This is just a year out from when my mom died. So buying a house without her,
Yeah.
she would have made curtains like. So how do you kind of rebuild into that life that you didn't expect you were going to have? So how do I feel the weeknights and then ultimately the weekends when my kid, my purpose wasn't there with me? And you'll hear this. I think I have the best kids in the world, but I'm a little bit biased. But who am I outside of this wife and mother? And I still had work and work was fine, but
Right.
but I had to figure out how to be outside of that.
Yeah.
And so I would try stuff. I would go swing dancing. I thought some girlfriends would go swing dancing. That was kind of fun.
I love swing dancing.
Yeah, it was fun. Okay, here's a PSA. The Chapel Hill High School Jazz Band is hosting a swing dance in March.
Ooh. Okay. All right.
Come out, live music. It's gonna be great. But I'd have to, find. I would go to movies all by myself. I would just go see the movies I wanted to see.
So what I'm hearing is like just you chose to engage in exploration, to do things, and that was kind of your way. So you're like, I've got to do something.
I gotta do
and
something.
Fill this time, and this was your way of doing it.
Yeah, I took photography classes, which turns out I love photography, so that was good. But it was just, I started coaching kids soccer. So I coached my kids' soccer team.
Okay. All right.
But it's just what can I do? Just what can I do? You mentioned I did a degree in physics. I did it to prove that I could.
Yeah.
I was smart enough to realize on towards graduating that I wasn't good enough at the math to make a career out of research, and I didn't want to be poor.
Yeah.
Which is sadly, if you're a graduate student out there, you probably understand that.
Yeah, I think I do at least.
Yes. So I wanted to. So I just went and found a job, and I enjoyed the job, and it was kind of fun. It was interesting, but life changes, right? So I was in my later 20s. I enjoyed working on the help desk. We had certain hours. I knew when my day would start. I knew when my day would end, and I'd be done. Then I had a kid, and once you have kids, you realize they don't understand clocks very well. And I was looking, I was starting to think, what does my next step look like? What can maybe I don't want to work. Maybe I want to take some time off. And then we had this one software deployment go heinously wrong, and I knew about it because my phone lines lit up. So we had a team of 10 or 12 analysts. There were 3 team leaders, and we came in on a Tuesday morning. I think it was a Tuesday, one morning, and our phones would just not stop ringing. So it was crazy, 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 and a software deployment had gone wrong. And it was a critical piece of software that all of our scientists used. They couldn't get their chemicals. They couldn't uninstall it. We managed to get out of that. And then my boss came to me about a week and a half after the dust had cleared and said, please make sure that never happens again.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun problem to solve.
This massive problem that's disrupted the workplace
Yeah,
is really enjoyable.
Yeah. So why did it happen? So, you have to sit down, okay, why is this happening? What caused it to happen? And we go and, we do a lot of talking, and we ask a bunch of people, and we figure out, all the failure points. And then once we figured out where all the failures were, we went and then said, well, why did it fail? And then we came up with a list of reasons why it failed. And so one was they did install testing, but they didn't do uninstall testing. And then there was another testing failure. And then they hadn't told anybody it was happening. And then they didn't have a backup plan. And then nobody was trained in how to use it.
This is a total tangent, but related to that. You mentioned kind of like you are in love, or you use, I don't know if you love them or not, you use to-do lists and checklists, kind of working backwards through this and seeing all of these points of failure. Was this like almost like a justification of your to-do list mindset? You're like, ha, nobody else remembers anything too.
Well, so the solution for this was actually a process. It was we need a deployment process and a checklist, and to make sure that this never happens again.
Right.
And I went around and I figured out who all the stakeholders were and went and talked to them about what do you need for it. And so out of that came an application deployment process. And it was cool enough that I got to go to a couple. My first overseas trip to the UK was to go over to the UK and train people on how to use this.
Oh, wow.
So,
do you think that you apply the same, like, let me scattershot, go out and find all the pieces and put it together kind of approach in your problem solving at work? Like, so when you have that big issue, what did you do? I'm assuming you didn't sit down and in a linear fashion go, this. I'm assuming you went and you talked to lots of people and tried to figure that out. Can you describe what that looked like a little bit?
I mean, I wasn't really joking when I referenced the sticky notes on the wall.
Okay.
So you have to go get information. But once you've kind of learned about what the thing is, that's where you brainstorm. So based on what I know about the situation, what could be the thing? And I would literally, because I had a cube, but I had like a cube with a cork board on it. And I would literally, as I'm working through this, I'd write an idea on a sticky note and put it on the wall. So literally I have a kind of I don't use the word scattershot, constellation. Think of it as a constellation, right? Sure. Or a galaxy of things that are going up.
Sure.
And the power in thinking divergently is you don't predispose yourself to anything. You have to take what you know and kind of let your brain make those jumps and think about, okay, this is what I know, what could it be? So that's how it works. That's how it works, like when you're trying to figure out a problem.
Sure. So
once you've got once you have a problem pretty well defined, and like if at the end of it, I need to produce this widget that does X, Y, Z, where divergent thinking is really powerful there is, what does X, Y, Z mean, and how can I get there? And so that's where you so if divergent thinking is powerful into figuring out what's going on, it's also really powerful into seeing what the possibilities are. Because I always and I've done some custom apps from like ground up where it was just like brand new. We don't have anything built. We just need to do this. Okay, this is great. What are our possibilities? And so that's kind of the power of it on both sides. And honestly, it works. It works in personal life. Right now, we had a flood in our house over Christmas, and we're going to have to move out of the bottom of the house and have all the floors refinished. But I'm sitting here thinking, okay, all the stuff's going to be out of the bottom of the house. What are my possibilities for making it better?
Yeah. my gosh, there's a book, or maybe it was like a TV show or a movie. It was like something series of unfortunate events.
A series of unfortunate.
I'm just like.
Yeah, I mean, but that's that's kind of the how we've talked about how does it apply in work versus how it applies in personal life. Like one of the other things I've done, I used to coach my youngest kids' youth baseball team. And you want hard math is putting together the game roster, who's playing what position, what inning, and what's the batting order. So there's a little divergent thinking involved in so and so can do this and this, but they can't do this. It's like, I'm not putting that kid on first base. That would be mean. So and so hates catcher, And so how do you take all this information and coalesce it into something, the batting order, so that you can put it on the clipboard and the kids know where they're supposed to go?
Did I just hear that you're considering which kids like or dislike each other in terms
of
first
base? No, just who should play first base versus who should never play first base.
Oh, okay. I was like, is the umpire like getting into fights with the catcher? Like,
no, but no. When I was coaching my oldest son's soccer team, we had a little girl on one of our teams who was very dramatic, and if you touched her, she'd fall over. Oh. So I would always have to make sure that she was kind of on the wing, so if she fell over, she wouldn't get run over, and then had a parent to grab her off the field if she stayed down.
She sounds like she'd be an excellent soccer player.
Yes. No, but how many times in your life do you run into just something that sort of knocks you back?
Right.
Like a flood or a batting order or, my older son, helping him figure out what he wants to be when he grows up. He's just graduated from college and he doesn't sure yet what he wants to do. And so if you approach this and you know that there's one path and one path only, you're going to miss something. You might not hear the kid on the baseball team who's been practicing and says, I really want a chance at playing first base because they worked on it. Or you might not hear your own kid saying to you, I don't really want to do that. Yeah. So if the power of having a squirrel brain, and we also joke about that. I'm proud of my squirrel brain. It's not without its challenges, right? Because it's hard to live in today's world, but there's so much power in it, because I think what it does, it gives you the opportunity to be open to things. Yeah.
I could see a world where like somebody has like this very clear vision of, what am I going to be when I grow up? And then when they grow up, it's how can I get the next promotion and how can I take the next career step, and everything's, but if your life requires everything to go in a linear step-by-step fashion, my life certainly hasn't gone that way. Maybe somebody's does, but I think it makes it hard to adjust. So having that squirrel brain kind of as you're describing, it's like each time you encounter a bump, it's empowered you to look out, see the opportunities, and keep going.
Yeah, and I think I want to be careful to say that, there's value in the linear thinkers. Without linear thinkers, we don't have airplanes or spaceships or, honestly, safe medicines, right? My husband was a medicinal chemist. He made drugs. Yeah. So there's power in both. But I think what I've come to understand and enjoy is the power that is mine. And again, I don't yet know who I'm going to be in 5 years, 10 years. I mean, I sort of have an idea. I have some goals, but if that's not exactly where I end up, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But mostly, I want to get there in a way that's authentic to me and lets me learn from the journey.
Yeah.
So, hopefully that made sense.
It does make sense, and I really like it. I think one of the things that I struggle with, certainly, and I think other people struggle with as well, is this, like, you are not always going to behave in a way that is expected of you, but at the same time, you cannot be anything but yourself. And so it's like, well, how can I take these skills and beliefs and mindset and everything that I have and employ it in a way that benefits me the most, but also not judge myself too harshly for when it doesn't work out the way that I expected it to?
Yes. So that really resonated with me. Because I'm a woman of the South. Grew up in, 1970s, 1980s, North Carolina, with a pretty conservative Southern family, and they thought I would live at home until I got married. Didn't do that.
Yeah.
They thought I should be quiet, and, children should be seen and not heard. I think one of the things I hope for my kids' generation, the younger generation, is you guys have the freedom to not be bound like that. To, there's value in not getting it right all the time. There's value in trying something and realizing that you hate it, and then trying it again. And your success isn't measured by how many fancy cars you have, but are you happy? Are you making the world a better place?
Yeah.
Are you doing interesting things?
Yeah.
So, that's really where it comes down to. I was 52 years old before I quit a job on purpose.
Really?
Yeah. So I left. So my first job for Microsoft, I left because I was getting married and moving back up here. But for the next 20 odd years, I didn't leave a job unless I was laid off. And then a couple years ago, I was in a situation where I wasn't happy at my job, and I didn't see a path forward. And I'm like, I should go find something else to do.
Wow.
And I was reading your profile on the way here, and you're like, I quit my job to try this.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Good for you. I should have done it a few years back. Of course, then I got, but the point being is, we need to learn. My path is my path. But and one of the reasons I originally reached out and kept talking to you is like, if I can share something I've learned that will help somebody, then I'm doing my part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like when you do something and it doesn't work out, whether that's a marriage or a job, which is another form of relationship, like we'll pause there.
No, you're not wrong.
Right. It can be frustrating because when something doesn't work out, there's like a mixture of like internal, I think, for me, guilt or shame, in addition to just like the difference in expectation versus like whatever actually happens and all those things. And so it's like, as a result, I think we tend not to talk about these kind of things as much as might benefit other people because of all of those things. So that's part of the goal of this is like, let's give that space for those kind of conversations, even if they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing it.
I probably, my family would tell me you should have never got married the first time. It's like, it wasn't pleasant. I got a kid out of it. I was a lot more careful the second time around. There you go. Some years ago, I was cooking bacon in the kitchen and spilled grease down my arm. And I spilled grease down my arm because I was talking on the phone at the time. So I earned myself a week in the burn unit yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. But I learned not to, that was a mistake I made.
Right.
But I learned from it.
Right.
Don't cook bacon anymore. My friend cooks bacon for me. I don't cook bacon anymore.
Oh gosh.
But in all seriousness, people mess up, and I think making it so that it's okay that you messed up is, I think we have to normalize that because nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
Perfection is the enemy of good, right? And I said that at my Taekwondo school a few weeks ago.
I did not hear that, by the way. I never heard that saying until I was probably like 26 or 27. Yeah. And I remember hearing it and being like, oh my gosh, that's so useful.
Well, yeah, but if you think about, like, I was thinking, I have a kid who's a sophomore in high school, and it's so intense. It's so, like, the high school experience is so intense. You have to do all these APs and this and that. And I don't know, I don't think I would have made it if I was a kid these days. I don't know how you younger folks, but just the pressure cooker to be perfect all the time and to always know the answers. And, that's, humans we're not built that way.
Right.
We have emotions. It's messy. Mm-hmm. We're going to mess stuff up. Mm-hmm.
There's a description that I've heard before where it's like, if you are always trying to do the right thing, if you're rationally, I think the phrasing they used was rational. If you're always trying to do the most rational things, you'll rule out lots of options. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that you can't, it's not guaranteed that any of those options will pan out the way you want to. So if you're trying to do the right thing the whole time, you're going to limit a whole bunch of things that would have been beneficial for you. Mm-hmm. And may be feasible for you, whereas the best option may or may not be, much less would it work out. Sorry, that was...
That makes a load of sense, right? Because... So I thought about this a lot. Like, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. So my grandfather... on my mother's side, my grandfather was, he was born in 1919, so he dropped out of school during the Great Depression to work and, work for and provide for his family. My grandmother finished high school. She had 5 kids, and of those 5 kids, my youngest uncle went to college, but he didn't finish. So I'm the oldest of the grandchildren. So I was the first person in my family to go to college and finish college. And my mom was determined that would happen. But, because she went to high school, she wasn't the greatest student, but she'd never gone to college. I think she had some expectations about what I would do, like, high school grades and gotta have straight A's and this, you gotta get out. And it took us a while to work out in our relationship, get to a point where we kind of understood each other. I have 2 kids now. One literally just got his diploma. One's a junior. And, my approach is so much different, because it's like what you're saying is like, don't have yourself on such a narrow path that you don't see the things around you. Try stuff out. I was joking with you about the swing dance, but not really, because my youngest child plays in the jazz band. He got to high school, and I did not tell him what to sign up for his high school classes, except for I said, please don't take honors English, because please take regular English. That's the only thing I said to him, and he signed up for jazz band. And he's a freshman, and freshmen don't usually play in the jazz band, but his teacher took a chance on him, and now he's so many things have opened up to him. So he's 2 years into it. He loves it. It's just, you can see it shine. Awesome. So, but we have to learn we have to learn. So, you're obviously learning some things and trying some new things, and they might work, they might not work, but you'll learn from what doesn't work. Right. And try over. Right. I mean, that's how life is. And if you only make it so that you never fail, you actually never learn anything.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that's really, it's kind of the paradox of, like, being good at something is like, you have to be willing to fail in order to get good. You have to be willing to experience those failures in order to find out things that you love.
So, I referenced my Taekwondo school. I started as an adult.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I started when I was 46 years old.
Okay.
I was massively out of shape. And if I have learned nothing in the past 8 years, is that you're going to fail. You're going to be bad at stuff. Yeah. There's things I'm still bad at, but I keep trying, because I might have a good day. I might still be bad at it, but I will have at least tried.
Yeah.
So in December, I actually earned my 3rd-degree black belt.
Congrats.
I was not perfect. It was ugly. I came in with bruises. I didn't do everything right. But the whole point is, I kept going,
Yeah.
you know, in spite of the fact that there are certain kicks I can't do, and my balance is crap sometimes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wanted to cry. I still kept going. I would never have thought to do this, except for my kids were both doing it, and I was tired of sitting on the sidelines. So I said, you know, this is where that divergence, this is where, that was my thought. This is where I'm going to close. My divergent brain said, what would happen if I tried this?
I love that. Because you're like, hold on, like, let me not sit on the sidelines, let me jump in.
Let me try this.
And it sounds like you love it.
I love it. It is my jam.
I like that you didn't shut yourself off from it.
No.
As like, oh, my kids are doing it, therefore it's a kid's thing. You're like, no, like, let me try this.
No, it's like there's some days like, oh crap, I'm an old lady and I have bad knees and I really don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
All right. Well, with that, thank you very much for
Thank
letting me
you.
interview you. And this has been TalkieTime. I'll talk to you next time.